Good evening, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather. Thank you so much for joining my community this evening as we take a look at two very impressive systems, one on each coast. A major bomb cyclone battering the Northwest and Northern California with hurricane force winds earlier, powerful waves, lots of wind, and lots of power outages. And a big storm in the east as well, cranking around the Great Lakes. It is going to bring heavy rain and heavy mountain snow and backlash snow into parts of the eastern Great Lakes, interior of the Northeast, even all the way down to the Appalachians and North Carolina. All of this as we get closer to the start of meteorological winter, which is a week from Saturday, 2 days after Thanksgiving here, as we are going to flip the switch from very mild, dry weather this fall to some much more active weather just in time for all of us to be traveling here for the holidays. So we're going to take a look at what's happening with the storm systems that we're tracking this week, as well as looking ahead to what's to come for Thanksgiving and into the not so distant future. Here's a look at our major storms on each coast. Big time flood risk, lots of wind, coastal flooding for portions of Northern California and parts of Washington and Oregon. In particular, I'm most concerned about Northern California. We are going to have on the East Coast another storm system that cranks out of this big upper level low, which is producing some heavy snow and blizzard conditions this evening in parts of North Dakota and Manitoba and Canada. But as that slides east, new low pressure forms, draws in a lot colder weather. We'll have frost and freeze conditions down into the southeast, chilly weather down into Florida, which keeps us quiet from the tropics. And in portions of the Great Lakes and in the interior of the Northeast, we are going to see rain changing over to our first snowfall of the season. Here's a look at our infrared satellite. You can see our bomb cyclone just off the edge here to the west of British Columbia. It even had a little bit of an eye circulating, but look at this feed of moisture. This is an atmospheric river that brings moisture across the entire northern and eastern parts of the Pacific, and it's directed at Northern California and interior parts of the Northwest. We have a storm system cranking here across the north central states, blizzard conditions on the backside. That is going to move east-southeastward, and new low pressure is going to form here near the East Coast, bringing some heavier rainfall and a change over to snow, not that far inland from the coast. Meanwhile, we have the southern tail of this front moving through parts of Florida. Thankfully, we have the tropical moisture that is left over from Sarah, but it is beginning to get sheared apart. So Florida is not dealing with nearly as much rain as what we had over the last couple of days across the central Gulf states. And more importantly, this cold front is drawing much cooler weather down into this area here as we wrap up the week. Here's a look at our bomb cyclone here off the west coast. You can see it has reached its maximum intensity. It will weaken some, but we continue to have extreme amounts of moisture coming onshore. We continue to have very high wave action and very dangerous boating conditions across the west coast. And this storm, not our strongest on record, but kind of in the top 10 over the last 10 years. Definitely one that we have not seen as strong in the last 10 years. Here's a look at our hazards across the United States, and you can see a blizzard warning in red through this evening over parts of North Dakota. That is surrounded by winter storm warnings over parts of western Montana, eastern South Dakota, and far northeastern Montana. We also have watches and warnings for winter weather across the interior of the Northwest and a flash flood watch across Northern California where the risk for flooding is extreme. We do have a winter storm watch here across, or actually this may actually be a warning now, over eastern Wisconsin as our low pressure system cranks here. And then as the cold air wraps in behind our storm, we are going to have winter weather, in particular across the snow, the ski areas and the higher elevations here of West Virginia, Western Maryland, and Southwest PA. But winter weather advisories extend all the way into southeastern Kentucky to the Tennessee, North Carolina border, and unfortunately impacting those that have been hit by Helene, and many of those folks are still without a suitable home, and we'll be dealing with strong winds and some snow falling here through the remainder of this week as that cold air begins to push in quickly. I'm pooping quickly. Push in quickly here from the northwest. A long day on the phones today. So anyway, here you can see, looks like a hurricane, but take a look at some of these swells off the west coast here as our bomb cyclone continues to spin. It will weaken, but we are going to continue to have unsettled weather along the west coast into the weekend. Just the first of what should be many systems impacting the northwest. And at latest check, now this number has improved, but around the Seattle area, still Close to 500,000 customers do not have electricity here this afternoon. And Snohomish County on north, we have power outages as well due to the high winds that have impacted us. And a lot of these power outages are actually closer to the higher elevations to the east. In Northern California, we've had higher amounts, but we still have significant power outages as well around the Siskiyou range here and around the coastline. And parts of Oregon also have a few power outages, but not nearly as much as what we have in California. Take a look at some of these rain totals. It's like a fire hose being pointed at California here, north of the Bay Area. This is what's called an atmospheric river. It is a long transport of moisture, and you can see amounts here over the next 60 hours will be extreme. Locally, as much as 34 inches of rain is expected to fall across northern portions of California. And I'm going to zoom in to show you which areas are probably going to see the worst of that. Primarily, we're looking at the coastline, but we do have a lot of higher elevations here around the Siskiyou range that will see extreme amounts. Closer to the Bay Area, more on the north side, less on the south side, but a few inches of rain will be possible. Take a look at some of these wind gusts here. Now, they are going to be coming down, but California getting battered with high winds here. Even interior portions of the northwest high winds, but we've got another wave of gusty winds that will hit western Washington with more power outages possible as we get into Friday night. Here's a closer look at California first. I'm trying to keep my tabs down. Some of you said I have way too many tabs open. That is definitely true. But take a look here near the coastline, wind gusts of 60 to 70 miles per hour expected over the next 60 hours. The majority of those will actually be this evening and during the overnight hours tonight. Another push coming during the morning tomorrow right here across northwestern California. But as I had mentioned, in Washington, we also have high winds to talk about. I'm going to click on that and show that to you here. We had the high winds from the first surge. Here comes the next surge here as we head into Friday night. We'll see gusts over 50 miles per hour before the end of the day and approaching 70 miles per hour on the Olympic Peninsula and on the coast during Friday night. Here's a look at snow totals in the west. Big time numbers here in the next 60 hours. This may be over-predicted. I don't know, but 474 inches of snow in 60 hours is a little bit extreme. If you look at the blend of the models, I guarantee it's going to be less than that, but still 176 inches of snow in 60 hours. And you'll see the majority of that is going to be occurring in the mountains of British Columbia, but quite a bit as well in the Oregon Cascades as well as the Washington Mountains as well. So the ski areas will be happy with this forecast, but it is going to cause all kinds of travel problems. Shifting gears here to the eastern storm, we obviously have a storm over the Dakotas, and that will spread into Minnesota and Wisconsin here. You can see through the evening hours tonight, heavy rain spreads into eastern PA, New Jersey, and downstate New York and Long Island, and that moves into southern New England in the morning tomorrow. But as cold air wraps in behind this, we're actually going to see snow rotating around the base of this trough across eastern Wisconsin and eventually affecting the lower Great Lakes region here by sunrise tomorrow. I don't think it'll be super cold on the roads yet, but we do need to watch out for icy spots. Now, interestingly, as this low continues to spin, warmer air from Lake Superior wraps in on the northern sides. The snow goes back to rain tomorrow over the UP of Michigan and over northeastern parts of Wisconsin and northwestern lower Michigan. At the same time, rain goes over to snow over northeastern Pennsylvania, central New York, portions of Ontario as well. And then we're going to see mountain snow picking up here tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night with some squalls expected here over portions of West Virginia. We could see snow coming all the way down to Crossville, Tennessee tomorrow evening, and maybe all the way down to near Asheville and perhaps to Waynesville as well in North Carolina later tomorrow night. And we could see some substantial snow here in Pennsylvania and New York away from the coastline here later tomorrow night and into the first half of the day on Friday. And don't be shocked here to see some snowflakes falling as far south and east as I-95, including Wilmington and Newark, Delaware, northeast Maryland, Baltimore, close to D.C., Gaithersburg, maybe even into parts of northern Virginia. The timeline on that changeover is going to be around lunchtime tomorrow and continuing into the evening before this moves offshore here in the morning on Saturday. Here's a look at total rainfall amounts here. You can see generally 1 to 3 inches across this portion where we're going to have low pressure here and an onshore flow sending moisture up into eastern Canada. Highest amounts will be in the higher elevations where those rates will be higher. We could also see heavy rain over parts of the UP of Michigan. And a lot of this is going to be snowfall as well, not just rain. Here's a look at wind speeds. And you can see strong winds expected here later this evening in western North Carolina. We'll have gusts over 60. Strong winds as well over the eastern end of Lake Erie and the western end of Lake Ontario. And as that front pushes through the mid-Atlantic region, we'll also have some gusty winds on Thursday, perhaps of the order of magnitude of 60 to maybe 70 miles per hour. Strong winds as well across parts of Wisconsin and around the Chicagoland area here tomorrow afternoon as that colder air wraps in. And we are going to see some stronger winds over parts of coastal New England and the mountains here tomorrow night and into Friday morning. Here's a look more closely here at the Great Lakes, just so you all can see 50-plus mile-per-hour winds in Wisconsin tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow afternoon, 40 to 50 in northern Illinois. Taking a look here, let me move that east for you all real quick. Sorry about that. That was not what I wanted. States. Let's pull up Ohio. There we go. As far as Ohio goes, western PA, we'll see some gusty winds, but more so towards Buffalo and the South towns, as well as the mountains of West Virginia. We could have wind gusts here in the morning that exceed 60 miles per hour, even late tonight. So some scattered power outages are possible there. There will be some winter storm impacts here as well across the mid-Atlantic region. Not so much tonight, but tomorrow we see some minor to moderate impacts in the Poconos, in the ski areas of West Virginia, even into the Smoky Range here. And we are going to see some impacts as well across parts of Wisconsin and downwind of Lake Michigan. And as we head into the end of the week, we will see an enhanced amount of impacts in the mountains of West Virginia, in western Maryland, and continuing across the mountains of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and even parts of New England. So altogether, not a major storm, but our first impactful storm of the season, first of what could be many for the mountains of the Northeast and for the eastern and northern Great Lakes. Here's a look at some of these predicted snow totals from the NAM model. And this is going to be a tricky forecast because a lot of it here is going to be elevation dependent. And here we're going to have the lake, and we're going to have to see how much that comes into play. But you can see over the next 60 hours, some pretty high totals are expected to fall over portions of West Virginia, Southwest PA, and the Poconos. If we zoom in a little bit closer here, I will say that the Kushner ratio is going to overestimate snow totals. However, just giving you an idea of where the snow is going to fall heaviest, you do at least can see where that's going to be. And I'm going to go state by state real quick from Weather Bell's website. So over the next 60 hours, potentially 6 to 8 inches will fall. Probably half of that actually sticks over eastern parts of Wisconsin. Looking at Illinois here, you can see, generally speaking, a couple of inches, but locally higher squalls could bring us a little bit more before that change to rain. So Chicago, I don't think we're going to have a plowable snow, but I do think we will have some snow. Looking at Indiana, a couple of inches, mainly north of Indianapolis, but those could even extend across the Ohio River into portions of Kentucky and East Tennessee. Locally, 3 to 6 inches here on the higher grounds of eastern parts of Kentucky and heading into parts of western Virginia, right along the border there. Moving into West Virginia and eastern Ohio, and obviously this is an elevational thing. Once you get east of 77, those totals go up substantially. I don't think we're going to have 40 inches of snow, but I wouldn't be shocked if we had 15 or 20 in places like Snowshoe, and maybe 6 to 12 in western portions of Maryland and the Laurel Highlands. Looking at Pennsylvania, we also see some pretty high totals here in the Poconos, locally a foot or more here once we get up to these higher elevations. Central New York, north and west of the Hudson Valley, maybe locally 10 inches of snow. And then finally, looking at New England here, I'm going to pull up Maine, because that's our biggest state. We will see some snow, mainly across the Presidential Range, the Green and White Mountains, and northern portions of Maine as well. I would not be shocked if we saw amounts that got up to over a foot in those higher elevations. So that's a look at what we're expecting here. And I already had these maps up for you. Let's take a look ahead here at the next week. So you can see big trough in the east, big trough retrograding off the west coast, warm air across Alaska, and we have this block that is forming near Greenland. That's going to allow our cold air to lock in across the eastern United States here heading into the rest of this week and the first part of the weekend. Now, as we head to Thanksgiving, you'll see things start to shift. Our storm in the east does move into Atlantic Canada. It will batter you in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland with rough weather. But in the eastern United States, we are going to warm right back up, and a lot of that snow is going to melt ahead of our next system of Pacific origin. And that system will be tracking across the north central states here early next week. and another piece of it will follow heading into the Rockies here. Now, after this one moves out, we do see colder air returning to the country, starting in the west at the end of this month and in the beginning of December. And anytime we have this kind of cross-polar flow here coming across North Pole into the western U.S., we have to be mindful of winter storms. And the area I think we need to be watching is in here. We're going to have to see how deep this cold air gets. And the models don't agree yet, and I don't expect that they will for a while. But take a look at this. By the beginning of December, we have a much colder look for a good chunk of the country here, especially the eastern U.S., and then an even colder wave coming to the west here the first week of December. So we are definitely going to have winter weather to talk about here over the coming weeks. Here's a look at the GFS operational. This is tropicaltidbits.com. You see the messy storm here in the northeast through the rest of this week. So it's a two-piece system. The upper level part of it in the Dakotas kind of yields to what will be a new system that forms kind of a two-barrel system, one over Lake Michigan, one near New York City. So Chicago and New York City both dealing with storms here on Thursday morning. The West Coast gets hammered right on into the first part of Saturday, then that moves inland. Next week, here's the next system. It will move across the Great Lakes Monday into the Northeast Tuesday morning. Colder air will follow, so a much chillier pattern in the upper Midwest Tuesday and Wednesday. And we've got to watch the battleground here from where the mild air builds across the south to where the colder air invades from the north. And just one run of the GFS, this could probably change, but it does show some trouble across the nation's midsection. And this is Thanksgiving Day. Now, this is one model run, so it can change, but we do see some wintry potential over Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Illinois. And we'll have to keep an eye on things in the mid-Atlantic as well, depending on how deep this cold air gets. But we're not done after that. Look at this cold that comes in here following Thanksgiving. Now, this run of the GFS shows an East Coast system. I wouldn't count on it too much on the actual East Coast. We're probably looking at I-95 West if this model is correct. But that cold air is going to set the stage for what should be a more active pattern here for the first week of December. This is looking pretty interesting. But I'm not just going to show you one run of the GFS. I want to show you the European as well, which gives you kind of another perspective on what could happen. So we see our storm moving off the East Coast here over the weekend, still affecting Canada, though. Here's the next system, Monday into Tuesday, crossing the Great Lakes. It's not really that cold just yet, but it does get sneaky cold here heading into Thanksgiving. And our next system on Thanksgiving on the European is farther north. It indicates we're going to have thunderstorms from the Ohio Valley on down and heavy snow over parts of Iowa and northwestern Missouri. This could be interesting in Kansas City and Omaha if this run is correct. So it's farther north than the GFS, but it does have a substantial storm. Black Friday is going to be wet on the East Coast. This is interesting, though. The interior of the Northeast on Black Friday could be set up for a snowstorm, and I don't know exactly how much and where exactly it plays out, but this is the European, and again, this is the GFS, and the two agree with each other here. This is Friday evening at 7 o'clock, Black Friday, snowstorm in New York and southern New England. The GFS is only a little bit behind and a little farther south. So this is going to be something to track here as we head towards Thanksgiving and beyond. You can see that European also has cold air, but it's not nearly as deep as what the GFS is showing, but it does have that cold air as well to follow. Speaking of that, here's the AI temperature forecast, turning much cooler at the end of the week over the eastern and southern United States. But take a look at what's happening in Western Canada next week. We'll see more extreme temperatures lining up with this front ahead of Thanksgiving. Mild in the east, much colder in the north and west. That cold is going to bleed down here for Thanksgiving and beyond. Look at Friday, Black Friday. Pretty chilly across the east, mild across the southwest, and very cold over parts of Western Canada. This would be brutally cold air set to invade the United States at the end of the month. And that, as you can imagine, will certainly not hold up. It will continue to plow south and eastward through the Great Lakes into the eastern United States for the 3rd and 4th of December. This could bring record cold with it, but it's a little bit too soon to get too specific until our models figure out the timing on how this plays out. With the cold comes the snow. You can see our snow depth here picks up in the northeast. It evaporates in the Midwest. Here comes the next system next week. We're going to pile up some snow over the upper Midwest and over the plains here through the end of next week. And we may see it start to pile up here in the Northeast. Again, really tough to say exactly how much snow there's going to be. I can certainly share with you what it's showing now. But this is, if we go back to the 12Z here, This is how much snow could be on the ground for next weekend, maybe just a few inches. But this is just one model. If we look at the GFS, and that didn't help, you can see things a little bit more interesting in Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware here with the potential for a few inches of snow on the ground. So we may get hit with an early winter storm here in the Northeast. But again, the ocean is warm, and you can see where that line is right now. So anybody who's within 50 miles of this line, do not expect this forecast to hold. It could go this way or it could go back in this direction. And of course, I'm going to keep you posted on that in the coming days. So here's the GFS ensemble. Total snow on the ground between now and Thanksgiving. And the most of it's going to be in the Northwest, in the mountains here, a lot in the Colorado Rockies, some in the upper Midwest, especially around Lake Superior and Lake Michigan and Lake Huron, quite a bit across parts of Pennsylvania and New York and the mountains of West Virginia. And as we go further, that continues to expand southward here. By the end of the first week of December, the snow prospects aren't great, but they are getting down into this area here. So as warm as it's been this month, it could get pretty cold pretty quick as we head into the month of December. And of course, you'll want to stick around for the latest on that and become a subscriber of mine, and you will certainly see those updates as soon as I have a new video, which I expect will be tomorrow afternoon. I'll be off Friday through the weekend. I'm traveling to Texas, and then we'll be back next week tracking the weather leading up to Thanksgiving. So as always, I thank you for your time today. I hope everybody has a great night, and I'll catch you again tomorrow. As always, I want to give all the honor and glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who I've been following for over 11 years as a Christian. And I want to share the good news with you all that salvation is there for the taking. The great part about being a Christian is that I don't have to do it all myself. The Lord has already prevailed over evil. He gave his son Jesus to die on the cross so that we can eternally live with him in heaven one day. But becoming a Christian is the easy part. Living out the Christian life, maybe not so easy for us humans. Luke 9:23, Jesus said to them all, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self? Whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his glory and in the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. Truly, I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the kingdom of God." And that's where I think people struggle to accept the faith and live the lifestyle of a Christian. It's not supposed to be easy. But what matters most here is that if you give your life to Jesus, then when your day on earth is gone, Jesus will have your back and save you. You can deny him all you want, but when that time comes, I really, really hope that you've made that decision, because Jesus will back you up and you will be able to stay in heaven in the kingdom of God. So there's no shame in that. He says, whoever's ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man, that's Jesus, will be ashamed of them. And I don't know about you, but we don't have a lot of time here on earth. What's really to be ashamed of? To be a believer, is that really shameful? I mean, yes, there are Christians out there who sin. We all sin. I definitely sin. We let each other down, but Jesus never lets you down. Or you can choose to not be ashamed and to remain in the world and not be a believer. But when your time on earth is gone and that's that, then you may go back and regret and say, man, I wish I had just been more faithful. So I wanted to share that word of encouragement with you today. It's not a sentence. It's not up to me to judge you. That is not my role. My role is to encourage you. But I just want you to be encouraged and understand that there is so much more for the taking eternally than you and I could even imagine. And that is a good thing. So I hope you all have a great night. I'll see you again tomorrow. God bless you.